Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural. And I hope you enjoy this new show, whether you're viewing it on the internet or listening to a podcast version of the episode. I do want to thank you for being part of my audience. You can also find links to videos or podcasts on miamighostchronicles.com, as well as where you can submit your story about any eerie experiences you've had, which I would love to hear about. Just go to the Submit Your Story tab. Please subscribe to our channel so that you receive notification of when we release a new show. And find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. This is where I usually live stream and where I give you a behind the scenes look at locations where new episodes are being filmed at. I also tell you about all the interesting guests that will be appearing soon on Stories of the Supernatural. I hope you enjoy the show, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi everybody, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural. How's everybody doing? Well, today I am super excited for the guest that I have brought to the show. This is somebody that, like I've said, has information and goes into all the different areas of the paranormal, because as you know, paranormal, a lot of people think only ghosts, and no, there's so many fields that for me fall under that umbrella of the paranormal. And this guest's name is MJ Banias. Now let me tell you a little bit about him. He's an educator, a writer, and a blogger. He was a former field investigator with the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, and he's been featured on multiple podcasts and radio shows and contributes to Mysterious Universe and Rogue Planet. His work has been included in Fate magazine and in a book entitled UFOs Reframing the Debate, which we're going to talk to him about that, absolutely. He lives in Canada with his wife, 2 children, and a massive cat. His website, which is going to be included in the credits of the show, is terraobscura.net. But we'll repeat that at the end of the show, and like I said, it's going to be part of the credits of the show. But anyway, welcome. How are you doing today, MJ?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
No,
It's an honor.
absolutely. It is my pleasure. It is absolutely my pleasure. Anyway, I'm going to ask you what I ask all my guests, because obviously you write about the paranormal and all the different fields having to do with the paranormal, but did you ever have an experience as a kid that was what propelled your interest into this?
I've never actually had like a proper paranormal experience, but my family is very strange and quite sort of superstitious, and when we would often go camping and tell ghost stories around the fire, and my parents, whether they should have or not, let me watch shows like The Outer Limits and The Twilight
Okay.
Zone and The X-Files, and I was probably too young to be doing that. So I've always had an interest in sort of paranormal subject matter.
Okay.
But no, I've never had a direct sort of paranormal experience, at least nothing that I could not sort of rationalize or explain in my own mind. Maybe I have, but I've always kind of walked away thinking that maybe it was just that, and I'm kind of comfortable with that worldview, I think.
Well, you know what? That's a fantastic groundwork for it, believe it or not, because I think that when you have that experience as a kid, like in other words, that you grow up, your mind, your imagination is very fertile. In other words, it's there. It's fertile ground for how can I say? I don't want to say, but suspension of disbelief.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Not the oh well, by the way, and I tell everybody, because everybody thinks that when you're in this work, there's no skepticism. It's like, no, believe me, I have a very, very high dose of skepticism, but at the same time, I always leave the door open for the possibility of something happening.
I totally agree with you. I think you have to have an open mind. I think you have to have an open mind, but it just can't be so open that everything spills out.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
so I agree with you. I think you have to walk a sort of a middle path in regards to your skepticism, but also your open mindedness.
Well, and you know what? And I think that unfortunately this field has suffered somewhat, because sometimes people have claimed things that it's like, man, come on. It's like,
Oh,
okay,
totally.
it's like, oh, and then everybody is like, oh, you're one of those. You believe like it's like, no, I don't. I believe in a lot of things, or at the very least, I'm willing to say, you know what? That would be interesting if I could get more information on this. Okay,
Right.
this is a possibility, but I'm not gonna close the door on something happening or one day. God, so many things sometimes happen where people at one point were saying, "Oh, that's a hoax," or "That's not possible," and then it turns out it was real. It's just that no proof had been brought forward for it.
Right.
So fast forward here, absolutely, which it sounds like you had all this. You were allowed. How's that to go in that direction? The possibilities were endless. Um, was there a point as an adult that you why you made that decision to go into this field or write about it or investigate it?
Sure. It was predominantly academic. In university, I studied English literature and I studied cultural studies and critical
Okay.
theory and philosophy. And a large chunk of my academic work was in the study of subculture. So I'm always fascinated by culture. I love the way people come up with ideas, and I love the way how people congregate and organize themselves.
Okay.
I find people fascinating, and in fact, my ideal vacation is going to sit in a cafe somewhere and watching people. That's my
I
ideal
love it. People are
vacation.
watching, yes.
So my academic work was predominantly in subculture studies. So I would be sort of writing about and researching various subcultures. And fairly recently, within the last 5 years or so, maybe six, I sort of started to engage more with, I guess you could sort of call it the paranormal subculture. So people who are
Okay.
interested in UFOs, people who are interested in sort of ghost hunting, people who are interested in cryptozoology, and just starting to um, I guess communicate with them, talk to them, emails back and forth, participate with them a bit in social media. I worked about 6 or 7 years ago actually with a local ghost hunting or
Okay.
like a ghost investigation organization. I was sort of just like observing more than anything.
Right. Like, yeah, along
Uh,
for the ride.
Yeah, there was a brief point where I was handling their emails because they needed someone. I was like, I'll do it. So that was enjoyable to sort of communicate back and forth with individuals who had strange experiences. So I sort of just threw myself into the subculture, whether it was related to ghosts or cryptids or UFOs, and it's been UFOs predominantly for me. But um, part of my academic background has just been dealing with subcultures, and I quickly realized that these are sort of very active subcultures within society. And I
Right.
became fascinated. So I've spent the last sort of 5 years or so properly researching, I suppose, and probably the last 3 years writing about them.
Okay.
And I joined the Mutual UFO Network, and I became a field investigator to investigate UFO sightings. So I've sort of thrown myself into the world of the subculture, sort of as an
Okay.
outsider who's never really been never had an experience or never really been super involved as a kid, just sort of diving in. And it's resulted in a book that will hopefully be published within the next month or two.
Oh, okay.
If my publisher finishes editing, he's allegedly going to be done in like a week. So I was really excited. I'm actually really excited that he's going to be done editing in about the week. So yeah, the book should be out soon. But it's basically a look at the UFO subculture as a sort of cohesive group. Yeah, so that's sort of been my dive into this world.
And and you mentioned that thing that you were an investigator with MUFON.
Yep.
What happened when you went out to speak to some of these people? Because that's one of the things I think is a real eye opener when you speak to people, and this is regardless of what, even if let's say they didn't catch any physical proof as in a
Sure.
photograph or anything like that, but that they actually do believe. I imagine that what they saw was not explainable as in
Right.
an airplane or any of the other things that you see up in the sky.
Yeah, it comes up a lot in my book, but Reader's Digest version. Um, I think a common criticism and a common um, idea that gets thrown around in the media, especially in the mainstream media, is that people who see UFOs or people who see ghosts or people who see Bigfoot are nuts, and they're unstable, or they are from a certain economic background or from a certain social background or a certain racial
Yes.
background, and you get this false message, I think, in the mainstream media about sort of who sees UFOs or who sees Bigfoot, or who has haunted houses. Um, and what quickly occurs when you actually start doing the research, when you actually start going out to meet witnesses, you're going to
Right.
always meet your fair share of kooky people. There's just kooky people in the world.
Of course.
But the vast majority of them are perfectly stable. They go to work every day. They buy Starbucks. They drive their kids to dance class and swimming lessons. And they just want to live their normal lives. But something has upset that balance for them, right?
Yes.
And they try to find answers. And unfortunately, as an investigator and as a researcher, I mean, but you're probably the first one who you probably agree with me. We're not necessarily equipped to provide answers. We don't
No.
necessarily know how the paranormal operates, and we don't necessarily understand how the phenomena works. So
Exactly.
we're there to just catalog, I think. We're sort of just watching, and trying to create maybe a data set that we can use to potentially do further research. But people just want answers, and unfortunately, we're kind of stuck in this world where we can't give them answers. But they just want to go on with their lives, and they're perfectly rational and normal individuals who, like I
Yes.
said, everything's been totally thrown out of whack. So
Right.
it's been a fascinating journey to have that stereotype broken, to meet individuals who, um, according to TV, don't see UFOs, or ghosts or anything, but clearly they do, right?
Exactly. And I'm so glad you brought that up because I think sometimes they might say their story to sympathetic ear as an investigator, somebody that is at least going to listen to them, but they might not tell anybody else because, like you said, contrary to what a lot of people think, they think there's just going to be a stigma attached to this if I start telling people that I saw this, or I think I saw a UFO, I'm going to get the weird looks. And a lot of times they've gone through a checklist of possible rational explanations, and it's really
Hmm.
difficult for them to think, you know what, none of these things fit for what I saw or what I experienced.
For
Um,
sure. Yeah, and I mean, witnesses will always make mistakes. There's always
oh,
going
of
to be
course.
error. Like there's no, it's not a science by any means. It's really a collection of stories, and we're sort of we're the collectors of stories, right? As investigators,
Hmm.
um, because often there's no evidence really that can be provided,
Right. Right. And I think that
photographs
that's
or
one
video
of
or
the things
trace
that,
trace evidence.
and I'm glad because um yeah, like you said, there's going to be the people that it's like, oh yeah, that light, whatever it is, that's a UFO, yeah, like, but
Right.
there's a good portion of people that it's like they're like, they don't, in other words, they're not really looking to have the experience. It just happens to them.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's been plenty where um, they're just minding their own business, and all of a sudden something pops up, and it's just like, what the hell am I seeing, right? Like, it's one of those moments where you sort of rub your eyes, and you
Hmm.
just want to go home and shower the crazy out, but you just
Sure.
can't, you know?
Right. Yeah, because everywhere you go, there you are. As
Yeah.
in, have you spoken? And I know maybe as an investigator, maybe you just go for sightings. Have you ever had reports where all of a sudden it's all these different reports? In other words, these people don't are not aware of other people having the same sighting at the same area or at the same time. Have you ever run across that?
Where you'll like one object seen by multiple people.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. There's probably been, for me personally, maybe two or three moments where I've had that occur. Um, I would say that, two for sure were just prosaic. They were
Mm-hmm.
military flares, like nothing interesting, but nothing
Right.
that wasn't sort of paranormal or anomalous.
Okay.
There was perhaps one that I'm sort of still unsure about, where I had a couple reports come in regards to sort of a large object in the sky, and it was seen by multiple people from different angles. And I had to sort of parse through these various stories to figure out, okay, they were each kind of looking at the same thing, we think, and because again, people provide wrong directions, and They're
Yes.
not really sure if they were looking east or north. And unfortunately that happens. So you have to kind
Yes.
of use other data to kind of piece all this together. But yeah, I have had one moment where I had a sort of this strange um, correlation, I suppose, of sightings that linked to one object. Um, as for what that object was, I unfortunately don't know. I was never able to sort of obviously get a definitive answer. Usually, if it's flares or if it's something more prosaic, you can usually call sort of the local, you call the airports, you can call the military base, you can call me like, were you doing this, or Coast Guard or whatever. You can usually call around, and eventually you'll get the, oh yeah, we were doing this or we were doing that. So yeah, they would have seen flares, or whatever.
Right.
But in this one situation, I called around. No one really came back to me with an answer that said, yes, it was this or it was that. So there was it wasn't an airplane as far as I could tell. It was just an odd triangular shaped object at night
Okay.
with 3 points of light. Um, we could debate, maybe it was some sort of aircraft, like a prosaic aircraft, that just
Hmm.
wasn't logged for some reason, or it was, there's an error. I don't know. But unfortunately, again, I can't sit here and say 100% it was, you know, something out of this world. I can only say that I still don't know what it was, and they still don't know what it was. And unfortunately, as investigators, we sort of have to leave it at that, because
Sure.
beyond that, it's speculation.
Right. Yeah. No. I would say what the majority of these episodes, if you want to call them, like you said, all you do, there's no answers. There's no. Sometimes because follow up is impossible. Sometimes, or you just, it's like
Hmm.
all I can do is, and I can tell that you're saying something that you believe to be true, but the best I can tell you is okay. You know,
You saw something weird.
it's just
What
something
that weird
weird. Yeah.
is, I don't know, but it was weird. Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of people now, and I'm gonna a little bit on this UFO that they've tied in sightings of cryptids, the
Sure.
abduction theories, a lot of a lot of things spin off of this. Some people just see, like you said, something in the sky that they just can't doesn't seem normal, but that's the extent of it. But
Right.
then there's others that, I mean, it could go from, implants
For sure.
to abductions since childhood, and others say, okay, there's also an uptick in sightings of cryptids or Bigfoots. Like, in other words, that it's all part of the same, I want to say, universe or whatever.
Phenomena. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a pretty common. This is a common thread that's been happening. It's been actually around for quite some time, but um, it was really popularized by an author by the name of John Keel and Jacques Vallée, who's another one who sort of suggested or speculated that maybe all paranormal phenomena are somehow linked. So ghosts, cryptids, poltergeist activity, aliens, UFOs, all that is all connected in some way to one sort of unified theory of paranormal events. And we often, yeah, we see this a lot now in UFO UFO conventions, and we see this a lot now in UFO magazines and websites. This link between all of these strange phenomena and being tied together. Um, it's one theory, I think, that is interesting, because I think it tries to kind of create a nice little package
Right.
um, that links it all together. What it does, though, is it starts to also alienate people, right? All the UFO people who are 100% behind the alien or extraterrestrial
Mm-hmm.
hypothesis, they're suddenly, whoa, what does Bigfoot have to do with this, or what do ghosts have to do with this? And then
Right.
all the ghost hunters, like, whoa, what do aliens have to do with the spirits of the dead? Like everyone kind of gets, we're kind of, everyone's getting each other's underwear, and everyone's getting all upset about it. Um, which is fair too, because ultimately I'm not sure if there's no evidence really to support either case. I think that there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that we have to kind of wade through first.
Oh,
Um,
sure. And
but
that's
it's
that's
it's
that's the that's the tricky part as far as evidence. I mean, I belong to a group here that occasionally they meet, and they do a lot of presentations. MUFON comes and does presentations. It's about UFOs, etc. And I mean, usually during the meeting they usually have a speaker come in, but so afterwards, you people start to talk, and I want to say that a good 60% of the people that are there, after I started talking to them, one of the first times I went there, they went on to describe where they think that they have been having some type of interaction with extraterrestrials since childhood, and
Right.
recovered memories and being visited here, and almost that it's totally enmeshed in their reality, for lack of a better word. Okay, it's not
Right.
like an isolated, like one day I think I saw a UFO and that was the end of it. It's like there's a whole thing. In other words, it overshadows their entire life, and I was like, wow, this is heavy duty. And I was talking to them, and like you said, you've got a couple that are like, okay,
Yeah.
but then others, they're quite rational about it when they describe this.
Yeah, I think for me, my sort of just off the bat first impressions litmus test that I sort of apply is if they come to me and they sort of tell me their story, and during the story, before it or after it, they say something like, I have no idea what's going on. Usually that's a good indicator for me. You know what I mean? Like if they
Yes.
approach the thing open-mindedly and say, I have zero clue what's happening, but this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's a good start. It's not evidence, but it's a good start, because now I have at least this initial reaction that you haven't already bought into something, versus people who come to me and say, I was visited by aliens from this planet, and or they came from this dimension and they're here because Bigfoot is their lost child and they're looking for him, and like
Right.
people come to me with this crazy story, and they say this is exactly what it means and this is exactly what happened, and I want to convince you of that. I kind of get a little jittery, right? Because now I'm like, well, you've clearly bought into some sort of paradigm or ideology, and now you're trying to
Exactly.
convince me of yours. I'm getting a little nervous. So
Yes.
you often have to sort of retreat and just kind of go, very interesting, and
Yes.
then you move on sometimes.
Right. And like to some people, it's like I said, it's very like it's like, man, you've got I could tell there's a lot of your imagination in this story.
Right.
It's like oh, but and like and because I want to say that there's two, and then there's the beliefs where that there's extra taking the abduction scenario out of it or anything like that, where you know how long have extraterrestrials been interacting with human beings, how do they get here,
Right.
um, are they even have they are they did they seed us, or were they just observers? In other words, I mean that's a whole different avenue of and which I want to say I feel that there's a lot more proof in that, short of an actual spaceship that's
Right.
actually there, because of course we've have all these stories that they've recovered, either bodies or spaceships, along the years, but actual like that's it. They've come out and said it, but there's so many unexplained things, especially from ancient civilizations, that you look at it and you're thinking, wow, how did they do this, or how were they able to do that, or um, certain either glyphs or pictographs or things that when you look at it, at least it makes you wonder, was there something from another planet that was visiting here
Right.
when these
And
civilizations were very young?
I think it's okay to wonder. Like I think it's okay to sit there and speculate and think about that kind of thing. But I think you also need to sort of appreciate that you're just wondering and you're just speculating. I don't want to alienate, pun intended. I guess I don't want to alienate anyone, but unfortunately, when we think about sort of ancient civilizations and how they did some amazing things,
Yes.
um, just because we don't know how to do it today doesn't mean sort of aliens did it, right? It just means
Right.
we don't know how to do it today. Um, and we I think we tend to sort of put ancient history into a sort of a framework, and to us, if we can't explain something from a long time ago, we sort of look at ourselves and think, man, well, we're the smartest there's been, therefore, we ought to know how to do this because that was in the past. We've sort of moved on in history, and now we're smarter. we should know how to do this. And that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of things people did thousands of years ago, tens of thousands of years ago, that we just haven't done or have forgotten or just don't know anymore. So I
Yes.
want to be careful not to speculate on the whole ancient aliens thing and whether we were seeded or anything like that. Like I said, I don't want to alienate anyone if people have those sort of beliefs or those ideas, and if they have evidence to prove it, that'll be amazing.
Right.
But I'm pretty cautious. I teach history, so for me, it's
Exactly.
it's difficult to hear my students tell me that the aliens built the pyramids, and I sort of have to sit there and go, well, maybe, but maybe they didn't because evidence. But it's one of those. It's one of those strange things that kind of happens in the subculture, right? There's all of these different ideas floating around, and they link together sometimes, and sometimes they don't, and we tend to get into arguments over these sort of, just like I said, circumstantial pieces of evidence that really don't lead us anywhere. They just kind of lead us down this road of speculation. So I want to be careful.
Well, and let me ask you, do you, especially, I want to say, because, we have technology that's moving right along that sometimes moves so quickly that we're like, huh? And
Mhm.
it's almost like, I want to say, even though, we've always had like ghost stories and folklore and things of this nature, but it's almost like at the same pace that technology is, just going along, we're also like trying to diverge away from it, like going to the non-technological beliefs, where
Right,
technology doesn't exist or it can't be, it's not explainable. It's like we
right.
want to like have a place where we can go to where it's almost the mystery where technology is
Right.
there. It's
Yeah,
everything is totally precisely figured out.
yeah. I think that technology will get humanity, and it takes humanity to a certain point, right? We
Right.
technology, solves a lot of our problems for us. I mean, it allows us to have a conversation across a continent, right now. Um, but what occurs is well, not what occurs, but I think humans naturally are drawn to sort of that other side, right? We're drawn
Right.
to the paranormal, right? I think humans naturally want to feel that there's something else there, right?
Yes.
Or they know there's something else there. There's a reason why the vast majority of this planet practices some sort of religion.
Right.
Um, whether it's an organized religion or whether it's a disorganized religion or a spirituality of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of humans do this, right? We even talk about regular, everyday sort of social concepts in spiritual ways. Um, uh, we say stuff like, there has to be justice, or we say, we believe in something called social justice, or we believe in
Right.
this idea that things ought to be equitable for people, right? Everyone should have food, everyone should have clean drinking water, and this is just. Um, and this is sort of a spiritual term, right? There's really no
Yes.
such thing objectively as justice. It's not like it floats around in the universe and you can pick justice up like you
Yes.
can your cell phone, right? But we believe in it. We believe in it as an ideal. We believe
Yes.
in love like that too, right? You can't physically go out and pick love up and put it in your pocket, but we believe that love exists. And again, it's a very spiritual idea. It has to be. I mean, try telling your wife or husband that you love them because it's just brain chemicals or chemistry of the mind, or neurons firing, good luck ever, getting back in the sack. Um, I love you, baby, because it's chemicals. That is very unromantic. Um,
Exactly. It is. It is.
so we sort of function like this, and I think humans are naturally drawn to this idea. We like the mystery. We like
Yeah.
this unknown. And again, we can go all night, but you know
Well,
I'm a literary guy, so I mean I talk about Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung, who believe that across cultures and across time we have the same stories, the same folk tales, the same
right.
archetypes that move through all cultures and all societies, and they're universal. So from a literary perspective, I can talk about this version of spirituality that exists, right? This interconnectedness of ideas.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that it's a pretty it's a huge drive for humans to seek out those ideas and to seek out those concepts, because like I said, technology can only get us to a certain point, because beyond technology there has to be something, I suppose. um,
Well, I
and
mean,
and that's the
we
realm of the
try to
supernatural,
mystify
right?
even that because I'm sure you've seen some of these futuristic dystopian or that would let these movies or these stories as where when does AI become sentient,
Right.
or when we kind of merge, well, where we are like half robot, or half
Sure.
human. And even the Blade Runner movie, the original one and the second one that just came out like about a year ago, was the same thing. The whole premise. Spoiler alert in case anybody hasn't seen Blade Runner 2049, where AI was able to give birth to human life. There was
Right.
a crossover, and we always have that we want to take the edges off the technology thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think technology is something, you know, we create it, and control it, but it also controls us and it also creates us, right? We're shaped by the technology we shape, um,
Yes,
right?
right.
So yeah, maybe yeah, like you say, we sort of even spiritualize technology to a point, right? We allow it to become our sort of one of our deities that we worship. I don't know.
I think, as I
This
think,
is a
honestly, I
fascinating
think
conversation.
and I've heard number, that we're hardwired. That I think we are spiritual people. I don't know, species. If you, I know there's people out there that they could say they're atheists or they're agnostics or they don't consider themselves very spiritual. But I think as a whole, we kind of like try to go there. We kind of have that makes us feel better, if for lack of a better, like you said, some people have a religion or some people have spiritual beliefs or whatever, but that kind of holds our world together.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, to a point, even atheism is spiritual, right? You're always going to have atheists who would still potentially say, social justice is a thing or human rights are a thing.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's just sort of something we made up, really. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, that
not
that
that I
that
don't.
that that that. In other words, what you're saying is, for them, it matters. In other words, that
Right.
it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer in human rights. I'm, I'm very much a social person and a socialist, but
Mm-hmm.
the the fact of the matter is we just sort of naturally seem to follow these rights. We just naturally don't kill each other. We just naturally care
Right.
about one another. We just naturally want to take care of the sick, um, and the injured. Um, so we've created this. We've simply taken what we kind of naturally do and the our natural actions, and we've turned them into something universal, that we
Right.
sort of believe in, and that's the key word, right?
Well, and you know what, and it's really interesting because I like I said, I was looking at some of your blogs, pieces, your articles, and I was noticing here also that you had written a piece about monsters. And as far as the mythos, or in some cases folklore versus the reality of it, I guess,
Right.
for people that have had either actual experiences or whatever the case might be. um and again, I don't know, I guess for the person that has had that individual experience, that yeah, they could tell you about it, but unless you were there with them, you maybe might not understand,
Right.
or even up to a certain point believe
Yeah.
what it is that they're describing. Do you think that what people think they see as truth is because they actually had a real experience, or saw something, or it's just like, I really don't understand what my eyes are seeing, so since I can't really name it, I'm gonna make it a Bigfoot, a
Right.
dogman, a whatever.
Sure. Um, I I think one of the best perspectives to view this with, I want to avoid sort of cultural appropriation as much as I can here. So
Oh, but
I'll
don't worry about it because it's well understood that sometimes it's just some things are, part of what
yeah,
that culture. It's like, but anyway, go
right.
ahead.
So within a lot of indigenous cultures,
Mm-hmm.
there's gonna be a lot lost in translation here because I'm not indigenous. So again, I apologize for being culturally awkward here. But for many indigenous cultures, I'm in Canada, so especially amongst Canadian indigenous cultures, when when individuals talk about this idea of truth and this idea of myth or story,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's no real line that divides the two. So in various indigenous cosmologies, um, fact and fiction, truth and story, or truth and myth, are part of the same thread or the same spectrum. They exist within the same concept, and in fact, they have different words for when you're talking about um, something that is real, like physical, like a table, versus something that is real and physical, but also part of myth or part of a story. So I think the key way to look at this concept, and I think you can kind of interject any sort of paranormal event here. It doesn't necessarily have to be monsters. It can be UFOs, it can be
Right.
ghosts, it can be anything. Is looking at the phenomena not as being either truth or fact versus myth or fiction, but rather viewing it as both simultaneously. It
Right.
is both truth and myth. It is both fact and fiction at the same time. And what this allows you to do, I suppose, when you're sort of dealing with the story, then is you're not putting weight or more importance on something that is sort of factual versus something that is more mythological or story based. Um, because ultimately, we can probably sit here and say, listen, people have had strange experiences.
Right.
We can sit here and say people have seen creatures, people have seen strange objects in the sky, people have seen ghosts, people have had poltergeist activity, people have experienced these things to the point where it's not just a story anymore. There's something happening, right? There's gravity to the
Exactly.
situation. It takes on some sort of weight. Um, so we need to be careful not to say, fact and capital T truth is sort of more important than the myth, because again, for the vast majority, I think, of human history, we never did that. We never said truth and myth were two separate things. I think from all of us at some point were indigenous to somewhere, you
Yes.
know, tens of thousands of years ago. We would have had similar cosmologies. I think we would have had this idea that there is no divide. Only recently, within the last few centuries, have we really said we're going to divide fact from fiction or truth from mythology. And we've created a
Right.
whole system of terms and language to deal with this, right? The sciences predominantly sort of function in this way, right? They differentiate themselves from mythology. So I think that's sort of in a nutshell my answer. I like looking at it more from the this indigenous worldview, of this idea where you can have both truth and mythology working simultaneously, to create something. Now,
Exactly.
does that mean that every single person who sees a Bigfoot, or every single person who sees a werewolf, or every single person who sees a ghost is actually seeing that? No, of course not. People are going to make mistakes. People are going to be delusional. People are going to have fugue psychoses, and like, that's going to
Yeah.
happen. But you're always going to have those handfuls of cases where the evidence is totally the contrary. The person was not delusional. The person did not have some sort of psychological breakdown.
Right.
The person saw something and experienced something, and even sometimes to the point where it leaves physical evidence, right?
Yes.
Scratches on a car door, or a dent in a hood, or burns on the ground, whatever, right? Um, so whatever occurred. Um,
Exactly.
the big question becomes, like, how did it occur? What caused this creature, this monster, this UFO, this ghost, this alien, whatever, to manifest? What caused it to leave the realm of mythology of nothingness, let's say, and become something objective like the table in front of you, or your headphones, right? Like what caused that to occur? And I think that is sort of the big question we need to wrestle with, is not so much whether it actually was a Bigfoot, or whether it actually was a ghost, or whether it actually was a poltergeist, but what caused it to become real. Or I got to backtrack. Not what caused it to become real. That's a mistaken terminology. What caused it to become physical.
Exactly. And one time I was interviewing this gentleman. He's out of Alabama, and he's run like a Bigfoot society since the 1970s. So he's been doing it for a long time, and he's gotten all the stories. And he tells me that even now, when the police get calls from people that they saw something on the road, they bring them over to his house, because it's like, what are they gonna do with these people? And
Right.
he's told me, he says these people are legitimately scared, that a couple of them have even said, "Sir, can we stay here at your house until daylight because
Yeah.
we don't want to drive home." In other words, he goes, "I wasn't there. Obviously, I didn't see what they saw, but whatever they saw, they were scared. They knew, or like they wanted to stay here at my house. That's
Yes.
how real it was to them."
Right.
And that this is, to me, that's like the hallmark usually, because I think you see it where the how can I say it, the fear is so urgent that they're dealing in it right then and there. They're not even worried about tomorrow. It's like, I just don't want to drive home in the dark and have this thing run across the road again.
Right.
That
Yeah. That's not. That would be awful, I think. Yeah. I have a cabin, like, so I'll often this is an inside joke with my wife, so she'll like it. But I have a cabin, and often at night we leave, my parents-in-law, who have a cabin sort of close by, and we leave it at night, and we had supper, and it's time to go home, so we pack the kids up in the car, and I have this fancy Ford Explorer. I don't know how I found a great deal. But anyway, I bought this Ford Explorer, and it has a backup camera. I've never had a vehicle with a backup camera. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, you put the car in reverse and the little screen, and so anyway, I guess it has an IR light, or it's an IR camera. So when you're backing up at night, it has that kind of grayish, greenish tint, like all
Okay.
IR footage does. And I put the car in backup, and the sort of drive that we go down, this sort of gravel road, right, it's just trees and darkness, and then just this little strip of gravel that you can see. And every time we're driving and backing up down this road, I always tell her, I say, I'm gonna put this car in reverse one day, and something is gonna run across, and we're gonna sleep in the car. We're gonna lock the doors, and we're just gonna sleep in this vehicle, because I am
That's
not
right.
stepping foot outside, right? Because I'm afraid of just backing up down this quiet, deserted, silent road, and then suddenly this thing just running across, and me seeing
Yeah, that's it.
losing my mind. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what's gonna happen. I haven't had a paranormal experience, right? I haven't seen anything scary in my life like that, and I'm sure it's just gonna happen one day after, a nice supper with the family, kids in the car seats in the back, and then all of a sudden this thing runs across. Great, my one paranormal experience, and it had to be this. My fear. Yeah.
You know what that reminds me of? I can't remember. I think I want to say they stopped producing them, but there was they ran it where you would have a friend play a practical joke on it, but it was very well
Oh
done. And
yeah.
normally they would set up stuff like that, like
Oh,
UFOs, or cryptids, or really really, but it was very well done, believable. They would entice this person. It usually was like
oh,
doing a job, come in and do this
right.
job. And
Yeah, yeah.
some of the
That's
pranks they pulled on people, I the only thing I was always amazed is I would have run. I would have just run. I would have just left screaming and run off. And people,
right.
you could see that they were like totally immobilized. I
Oh
mean, you
yeah.
could tell the fear, because I was thinking, if I was there, that production company would have had to go find me like about 2 miles down the road to tell me that it was a joke, because I would have, you know, because it was so believable. And sometimes I think that in part that's what you're describing is like, if I actually see something like you just said, from going from no, I've never had an encounter or seen something, of all things, to see something like you said in that camera backing up the
Right.
car. Oh my God.
but it's strange because that's what a lot of experiences are. I think for a lot of people, they've never had a paranormal experience ever,
Yes.
and then and they just kind of like they just I just had supper at my parents. It's been it was a nice night. My life is great. I live this perfectly normal life. I drive an SUV. Life is sweet. Like everything's normal and wonderful. I have a great job. Healthy family. And then all of a sudden, I back up one night and my
You see,
camera turns on, and oh God, there it is. Right? Like
you know
that's
what?
that's
That's a
everyone's
great opening scene from a fantastic horror movie. You know that, right?
right. Oh, I know, and you can have it if you're ever going to write a horror movie. You can borrow it and just give me credit somewhere in the process there. But yeah, but that's the experience people have, I think, and that's what the paranormal kind of does. It waits
Yes.
for us to be in this lull, right? We're not ready for it,
Mm-hmm.
and then suddenly it shows up, and it's this sort of instant jolt. But this is sort of again how religious experiences happen for a lot of people. This is how anything sort of spiritual happens. Often it's this it's not a process, but it's a sudden jolt, and all of a sudden things are no
Yes.
longer the same, right? The world no longer makes sense.
Yep.
What as one of my colleagues once put it, um, you no longer know what reality is, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's um, an important way to look at it, because that's what happens. It shifts our entire reality to something else.
Well, let's face it. I mean, if there's one true thing about human beings is that we like our routines, or you know, I mean, don't get me wrong. Everybody likes to have an adventure, but at the end of the day, we like to have our routines. Like you said, we do this, we do that. Our family's okay, and if I turn this road down this road, I'm gonna see this and that and whatever. It's almost like, yeah, some a lot of people complain about falling into a rut, but we're creatures of habit. And
Hmm.
talk about going from a rut to like your reality shifts and goes sideways is would be having that moment like you just described.
Yeah, we all sort of, like I said long before earlier. I said, we all sort of long for the paranormal, and we all,
Yeah.
seek this thing. But when we experience it, we don't like it.
Oh
It's I changed my
no.
mind. I want to go back now. I want to go back now. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, see, that's the thing that it's like, how do you unsee it?
Oh yeah. You don't.
And I tell people, on some of the investigations that and I want to say this predates the time that all these paranormal reality shows came along where people were like, oh, it's a ghost, yay. One of my first tip-offs, because I would do a lot of the pre-interviews, were that people were
Right.
genuinely scared, as in, I can't make sense of this.
Right.
I've tried and I can't make it fit, but I can't ignore it either. Or in this case, if they were having something, it wasn't. In other words, it wasn't just a. Sometimes it was a one-time thing. Other times it was more than just a one-time thing. And I think what happens to a lot of people is like, if my reality wasn't real, what else out there is there that it's not really what I thought it was? It's
Right.
like, whoa, and I think that freaks a lot of people out when they have anything really happen to them. Is like, what else is out there that is going to make my life and everything that I thought was maybe not the way I thought it was.
Yeah. It's quite jarring. Right. It's quite a jarring moment.
Yes.
It shakes loose um, everything you think about yourself. It shakes loose everything you think about the world around you, um, and it leaves you wondering, like you said, what else is going to be shaken loose next. What's going to be shaken loose next, right? What's next to go?
Oh,
Um, and there's great anxiety in this, right? It's actually probably like most people who suffer from anxiety, it's they're afraid um, of the instability,
sure.
and all this does is it causes instability.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for them, it's the anticipation of the instability.
Yeah.
And what's really funny is, I don't know if you've gone to, well, that now the gaming, there's so many people into the, these game, that basically you're doing it. And if you've gone to any of these Comic Cons, there's this huge industry, and, and I laugh because there's some that are modern and others are like Warcraft. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? If you guys were ever actually thrust truthfully into any of these worlds, you'd be like, I want to go home now. Like if
Yeah,
people were
I bet. Yeah,
shooting at you, or you could be eaten by something, or you know, you there was no electricity because a lot of these games are their settings are different. For example, they have one of the was the Assassin's Creed or these other things, and
right.
I'm thinking to myself, you know, they're like in other words, people have become very involved in this, like almost like their characters that they develop are there, and I'm like, don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against games, but it's like the truth is, if you guys were ever inserted there, within 10 minutes you'd be like, I'm ready to come home now.
That's right. Yeah.
Almost like that. You know that movie Jumanji with
Yeah.
Robin Williams, late Robin
Yeah.
Williams, where he got sucked into the game and it was horrible and it was like, oh, that
It's a
kind of
great film.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, it's interesting, MJ. What where imagination starts off, which ends up becoming reality, as in maybe a lot of, for example, sci-fi writers that when they were writing some of their stories, they were like, yeah, that's sure we're gonna go to the moon, sure we're gonna fly, uh-huh. Some of this, Jules Verne and Edgar Rice Burroughs, and then all these other ones that were when they started going into sci-fi, and a lot of the things they wrote about have, in some version, become reality. So it makes you
Yeah.
wonder.
It does. It's actually interesting. You mentioned Blade Runner earlier, which is based off a novel called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?"
Exactly.
Um, Philip K. Dick, who
Mm-hmm.
wrote that book, had paranormal experiences and like strange at least allegedly strange alien contact experiences, and a lot of his writing was inspired by some of the things he sort of um, was, I guess, supposed told would be sort of the awkward way of putting it, but sort of what these beings informed him of
Okay. That's really interesting. I had not heard of
came
that.
from. Yeah, yeah. He was very much a believer in sort of the paranormal and the UFO phenomena because he had personal experiences. Um,
Really?
yeah, and a lot of his inspiration for some of his work came from that.
Yeah, because what was it?
So
I want to say Total Recall, the movie Total Recall was also based on one of his stories, right?
I believe so. I don't remember
I
which
know
one.
that, and I know Hollywood takes a lot of liberties with these original stories.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a few.
yeah,
Like science fiction, especially science fiction authors tend to have, um, I think a lot of them have strange experiences, and then they use that to create their work. Um,
yes,
who knows?
yes. Right. Well, you know what would that be interesting that you think about it, which, you know, even though of course obviously he was the author, when they were published, these were all fictional works or
Right.
whatever. How much of it would you say was, with part of his
Well, not
imagination or part of his
right.
own personal experiences?
Yeah, I mean, most writers like we're all nuts as well a little bit. So maybe that's part of it as well.
Of
There's something
course.
there's a screw loose somewhere in there, and
Yes.
you start pumping information. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
inspire.
yeah, I'm. Who was it the other day that I was? Ray Bradbury. I mean, I was fascinated to think that this guy basically was self-taught out of library. I mean, he
Yeah,
was like he
yeah,
he
that guy was a genius just
yeah
on his own right. Yeah,
and it was like, but sometimes I want to say, and I guess I obviously he was talented, and he had the imagination, but at the same time he just like was going to the library, and this is where he learned, basically self-taught himself a lot of things, and from there, of course, all his stories and everything took
yeah,
off from there. But still,
yeah. I mean,
it's
he famously wrote Fahrenheit 451
mm-hmm.
at the typewriter at the library that he
There
went
you
to.
go. Okay,
He
yeah,
he had to rent. It was something like 5 cents for every 30 minutes or something.
right,
Um, and I mean, he was a broke writer, so
yeah,
it said like he wrote that book apparently in 4 hours.
It goes
like
to show
start to
you.
finish. Wrote it in 4 hours. It was based off a short story he wrote, but he wrote it in 4 hours at at a nickel per hour per 30 minutes. He
Yes.
finished that book and was like, here, send it to his publisher, and that was it. You know, um,
Yeah, and he was like
it's
taking
wild.
public transportation. I don't think he drove his entire life. If I'm not, I don't think he either learned how to drive or didn't drive. And all those times he was using public transportation to get around. It's like, there you
Yeah,
go.
I think we've gotten off topic a little bit.
I don't know.
Maybe.
It's like, I love to, well, to me, it's like, even though, you get into, because that's up to a
It's
certain point,
organic.
some of these authors are a product of their times in some way, shape, or form. If you, especially when you look back at some of these older authors, as far as what was going on in society, the beliefs, etc.,
Right.
and things like that. Like the one I want to say of all the ones that really just went off when he was writing was H.P. Lovecraft. He just like whoop, he just
Yes.
he
That
went off in a
man,
direction that nobody was going around at that time.
no. And only now I think people have well, actually, people probably have been appreciating him for several decades now. But yeah, he was definitely underappreciated, I think, during his time,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, definitely. He no, yeah, he was writing about things that back then were like what,
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
off as far as the regular type of even ghost stories or things that were being written about or that publishers wanted to see. In other words,
Yes.
MJ, and as when was it this book that you said that you've got coming out in about a month? Do you is there a title for it or anything
Um,
like?
yeah. I be honest, that I we my publisher and I just had a discussion about the title today, actually. So I don't want to
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
say anything too much,
Because it hasn't been
um,
finalized. Okay,
because nothing's really been finalized. We
okay,
sort of have. I think we're 99% sure,
okay.
but there's always that 1% that if I'm sort of you know under contractual obligations to
Sure.
not say anything too much. But yeah, the book is about the UFO subculture, um,
Okay,
about UFO people. So I think like I said, we're sort of looking at a mid to late November release,
okay, okay.
which would be great. So I will definitely, shoot you an email and let you know once I know the title and once I have a cover and everything. I can send you that email
Sure. Yes,
and
absolutely.
we can sort of talk about it a little more in depth. That would be
Yes.
great.
Yes, because I want to say I'm hoping that if you want to call it a disclosure that they had, what was it last year, that they kind of admitted to funding research on trying to identify UFOs. And by this
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily mean they're off planet. It could be just
Right.
identified. That we finally got an admission from the government that they had actually paid to figure it out. I'm hoping that down the line there's going to be more transparency with what's been done, with what we know and what we don't know, because I think sometimes they're afraid to come out because and have to admit that there's a lot that they don't know.
And I think that's a big part of it. I think they don't know very much, and I think
Mm-hmm.
people keep seeing these things and having these experiences, and for them to say we have no idea what's going on, um,
Yes.
is probably more frightening than them saying, yeah, here's the body and the UFO crashed in this
Yes.
underground base that the unknown is much more frightening than the known.
Sure.
So yeah, my prediction is more information will come out, and
Mm-hmm.
my prediction is going to continuously sort of point to the fact that no one really knows what is happening, and we're going to have to sort of start dealing with that and maybe living with that a little more. This idea that we don't actually know what reality is yet.
Right. Exactly. And
Yeah.
and it's like almost like if like what you said. Yeah, we recovered. Well, where did they come from? We don't know. Yeah, we have a ship. What is it? Well, we don't know. Are there more of them? We don't know. And
Yeah.
like you said, a lot of people, uh, they kind of have that belief, and of course, I'm going to blame some of it on Hollywood, where yes, the government has total control of this situation of contact with the extraterrestrials, and then the reality turns out that they just have some kind of information and sightings, but not really that much, and then everybody will basically go, "What do you mean you don't know?"
Yeah. I think that's kind of literally you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think they have a bunch of sightings and a bunch of reports and maybe a couple more videos or photographs or something, but nothing sort of that's totally going to be convincing. I don't know. I don't think they're sitting on very much. I think that's the inherent problem is they don't have very much to release. Um, but you know that's almost worse,
Yes,
than
it is.
than
It
than
is.
the other possibility. Yeah.
Yes, I want to say that for the majority of people, after they do that big hiccup, if they ever come out and say it, I think that you'll see more people, I think, melt down when
Hmm.
they realize, okay, so anything could happen, and then it's all
Yeah.
downhill from there.
Yeah. Yeah. When everything is possible. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that
Are they
becomes frightening.
hostile? We don't know. Are they friendly? We don't know. Do they have a cookbook? Referring, of course, to that famous Twilight Zone episode.
Well, where they,
We don't know.
yeah, where they eat us, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good one.
it's
Yeah.
like, uh-huh,
Okay.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, that's a lot worse when that question marks exist out there. But anyway, MJ, thank you so much for sharing this time with me. It has been absolutely wonderful to speak to you. Like I said before, I will include a link to your website on the credits of the show, but if you want to repeat again, what is your website address?
Sure. You can visit my website at www.terraobscura.net, or you can just Google Terra Obscura blog or Terra Obscura UFO. I'm the first hit there, and you can just click the link. And that's sort of where I keep all of my philosophical and theoretical rantings about UFOs and other paranormal subject matter. And I'm also on the social medias. So if you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram and all that
Okay.
at MJ Banias.
MJ
Nice and easy.
Bananas. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you so very much and good luck on your book.
Thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, likewise. Thank you so much. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye. So, guys,
We're out.
okay, let me see. I think I disconnected, but I'm not sure. Anyway, guys, what did you think? I think what a wonderful interview. It was wonderful. Okay, it was absolutely wonderful. And you know what the best thing that I liked about it was that, you know, like I said, what any part of the paranormal, but let's go into the UFO thing, which is um, sometimes there's so much effort about capturing proof. Whether it's the photograph. Don't get me wrong. I guess that yeah, if I saw something and I had a camera handy, I would try to capture evidence. But you know what? I've had instances in my life, and I think most people will recognize where I see something unexpected, whether it's a UFO or I'm not saying even a UFO, anything that I'm just you get so caught up watching whatever it is, looking at it, seeing it, trying to process that maybe the thought of either if you have a camera or a phone or whatever, it's just kind of lags behind, especially when it's something that you see unexpectedly, because your brain, I think, goes into this like, I think I what huh and then by the time you kind of think, okay, my phone or something, you're like, maybe it stopped or it moved off or whatever, and it's like that moment came and went. I mean, you know absolutely what you saw, what you experienced, but um and what I like about MJ, that he's saying, that yeah, for all the things that sometimes we have concrete proofs on, whether it's somebody's personal experience or whether it's the mythology behind certain events that happen, or beliefs that cultures have, or mythologies or folklore, uh, whatever they might be. And even now, like, uh, oh God, ancient aliens. That's basically, if you look at the premise of that show, is that they're tying in alien visitation to a lot of the myths or the stories or the paintings or the statuary that ancient civilizations produced from thousands of years ago all the way forward, uh, either being influenced by extraterrestrials or actually being produced with the aid of or directly by extraterrestrials. Uh, and some of the evidence is very compelling, but it's really interesting sometimes just to leave things out there in the sense of it doesn't have to be explainable. In the sense of, can I drill it down to, it's like, where's the proof? Or no, but, they said that in that mythos, but really what they were referring to was this thing of nature. You know what? I wasn't kidding when I said, as human beings, we all enjoy and we like a sense of mystery. I think that's why, you know, Goosebumps is such a popular series with kids, and even, well, when I was growing up before my time, there was no Goosebumps, but ghost stories, hands hold. Because even as children, we do like that sense of adventure and mystery, and even if it's not ghosts, because we are a part of our, I think I want to say, of our emotional, mental makeup likes the discovery of what's not seen or what could be or the potential, or uh, in other words, that we kind of realize there's more to the world that exists around us than what our five senses can capture. Sometimes it's scary when we do find that truth. It's like, what, I was great in theory, but that really does exist. Mm. Or uh, I really do think that it's part of our emotional makeup. Yes, we like reality, and that's the best place for human beings to be in. But at the same time, we do need a little bit of softness to the possibilities of the what ifs. And then again, you have people that actually have had paranormal experiences. Sometimes, when once is all it takes. People have seen crisis apparitions. Uh, People, I want to say, people even that don't believe that anything happens to us after we're dead. Like, in other words, that once you die, you die. That's it. Nothing survives the death of the physical body. And I've heard and know firsthand of people that have had experiences with departed loved ones that basically has just about undone them, because it's, I want to say it's even beyond being a skeptic. Okay, because I want to say, really, at the end of it, all skeptics always hold out that little corner where they think, well, maybe. But I'm talking about people that they're not really a skeptic. They just don't believe it. They really don't believe that that's possible. And when they have that experience that they know that it can't be explained, they have exactly what I was describing to MJ, where once you have that moment, it's like, okay, so what other assumptions or what other beliefs that I have about life or my life or human existence or the way the reality is not really the way it is. Okay? If this is not real, if this is not the way I thought it was, then what? If I thought that once you die, that's it, the dirt nap, and that's the end of you, that's it, like another, wow, if I'm wrong about that, then what else? What else changes? Same thing. You have a lot of people that have a encounter with a UFO or see something. I'm not even going to go as far as an abduction. Let's just say that's a UFO sighting, something that really truly, and I'm talking something a little bit more personal than a distant light in the sky. I'm talking maybe something a little bit closer, that your world does this thing, and that's it. You can't unsee it, because, like they say, wherever you go, there you are. You could tell yourself in that moment that no, that wasn't real, but come on, you know what's real and what you've witnessed. And then that opens up the door of, okay, what else in my existence, in my world, whatever it happens to be, is not really the way I thought it was. Wow, maybe I've never seen a ghost, but does that mean they're ghosts? Or I've never seen Bigfoot, but I think I just had an experience with a UFO. Crap, does that mean Bigfoot or what else? It's like, all of a sudden, I think all these, and I think personally there's people that after their first, like, wig out, they kind of like get excited about it, and then there's other people, depending on how tight you're wound, as far as like, I need to have my enclosures that can't handle it, that they kind of check out. They kind of really do check out. And they have, but which, by the way, sometimes your mind will do that just to keep you sane, is like you have like an amnesia, and like a this little spot of I can't remember either at all, or like those events are really foggy. And maybe you can remember things before it and after that, and sometimes I think in truth that, of course, the mind is always going to protect your sanity at all costs, including bearing a memory as much as possible if you can't handle it. Uh, and I think there's a lot of stories out there, a lot of stories without proof, just the person's word or description. And if they're by themselves, it's like, well, I don't even have somebody that was with me. And even then, you will have sometimes two people in the same place. In other words, standing side by side, where one will see something and the other one will not see it. And you can say, well, how does that work? I mean, it happens in the paranormal world where people will see ghosts. One sees it, one smells it, one whatever, and the other person is totally oblivious to it. But believe it or not, it does happen even with UFO sightings, where sometimes you will have one person see something, I mean, and then the other person's like, not, they just don't see it. And I think a lot of us are just more attentive, more vigilant. And it's not that you're more vigilant that moment, it's just that your nature is that way. You pick up on certain details just as, that's just the way you are. And then you'll have the person next to you, which is, unless it kind of smacks them in the face, they just didn't see anything. Sometimes it's not a bad thing. Not really, but it depends. But yeah, the possibilities are there, and I've mentioned it before in other shows. Despite all our technological advances, and which I'm totally for technology because it makes our life a lot easier, I think that the way as human beings that we're wired inside our minds, we also like to have that blurred line of, and not everything that's explainable, or not, it doesn't all have to come down to the exact equation of whatever that was. We want to do the what if. It's supposed to work this way, or it's supposed to be that, but what if it isn't? Which, by the way, is the premise of a lot of good horror movies. But anyway, guys, I hope you like the show. I've got a lot of fantastic guests coming up. Subscribe, whether you find me on YouTube, on any of the podcast platforms, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Podbean. I'm all over the place. Subscribe if that's the platform that you're using to either, download MP3 so you can listen to the show at your leisure. So that way you get notified when I release a show. Also, if you're a true believer, don't forget to send me your stories. As a matter of fact, I just got one today. Right before I started the show, I got an email. I got to read it. It looks really good. Don't forget to send that to me. Find me on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, Miami Ghost Chronicles. And again, I want to, if you have any guests that you would like to have return, okay, any book that you want to, maybe I can get a hold of the author, bring them on, or even discuss it, whatever the case might be, please send me an email at marlene@miamighostchronicles.com, and we will take it from there, especially also any subject matter. If there's some eerie, dark corner of the paranormal that you would like to discuss, also send me an email. We could discuss the subject, or I'll try to get a hold of either an author or an expert. We'll think of something, and we'll take it from there. But either way, guys, oh, by the way, that I'm working on season 6 of Stories of the Supernatural. Season 6 of Stories of the Supernatural. So again, I'm always looking for, and I want to clarify, because a lot of people think of, if you want to do the true believers, fine, but I'm always looking for new authors. It doesn't have to be anybody established. If you want to come on the show, please get a hold of me. I love it. You know, if you're a paranormal investigator, if you've got a team of, boo, I don't care. You know, I wanna hear about your experiences, whether it's as an investigator or your own personal experiences or what you believe. What's your skinny, what's how do you see whatever field it is that you're working in. Please get a hold of me because I would love to interview you. And because again, I've mentioned it, like the same thing, like for example, certain haunted places that everybody and all the shows they visit and visit and visit. Well, it's the same thing. After a while, you get kind of the same talking heads. And this is no offense to some of my guests because they're all wonderful, but kind of like I like to bring on new blood, new people that maybe are not that famous or not well known or not known at all. They're just the regular people out there that have a group together or have just written their first book, or they've got a great blog going on where they get feedback maybe from the community they live in about whatever area of the paranormal that they're dealing with. Please get a hold of me, Marlene at MiamiGhostChronicles.com. I would love to bring you on the show and interview you because at the end of the day, I think that's what people want to hear. They want to hear the stories about everyday people out there that decide that they're either full-time or part-time going into the paranormal, or that you've had maybe a lifetime of experiences, because there's people out there that they're not a paranormal investigator, they haven't written a book, but when you talk to them, they'll tell you, you know what, I've had so many experiences ever since I was a kid. All these different things happen to me, and it's like, man, we could spend here 3 hours telling these stories. I want to talk to you too. I want to hear from you. So again, thank you so much for being part of my audience. You're all absolutely wonderful because, believe me, I value the time that you spend here with me on the show. Take care.